what is relevant to you and your content and your author brand, because that'll help categorize your content. It'll help the algorithm know exactly who you are, what you write, and then it'll make you more discoverable. I do a lot of faceless author content ideas because a lot of people don't want to show their face or write under a pen name and maybe don't want others to know what they write. Hashtags are not gone, but they're not nearly as important as they used to be.
Salima Ishq is an award-winning author and social media marketing strategist dedicated to helping writers build dream writing careers and personal brands. With a passion for storytelling and a proven track record in digital strategy, she empowers authors to grow authentic platforms, attract real readers, and launch books with impact. In our conversation today, she discussed some of the common mistakes that authors make when trying to build an online presence. She gives 2 great creative prompts if you're in a space where you're trying to create content online. She discusses hashtags, she gives a tip on SEO, and she discussed why some authors might actually prefer to have a faceless content marketing strategy as opposed to one where they talk directly to camera. So let me introduce you to Salima. So Salima, could you walk us through the turning points that led you to writing your first book? And then could you also speak to how this catapulted you into becoming a social media marketing strategist?
Absolutely. I started writing during the pandemic. I started writing nonfiction, actually, and became a content and copywriter. So I was really deep in the marketing world, but I started using writing as kind of a therapeutic tool for my own mental health. And I write, all of my books involve mental health, but I started writing fiction and kind of writing out these big what ifs, these big fears that scared me, started writing them out into fiction. And that led to a handful of short stories. And then eventually my debut novel, Sisters Arcana, which is right there. So after marketing my first book, I found that marketing was actually kind of almost as much fun as the writing itself. And I learned quickly that other authors didn't feel the same way, that most authors don't enjoy marketing, and that I was a little bit of an outlier, which led me to want to share my knowledge with other authors and help make marketing a little bit fun for them, or at least a little less of a chore.
Yeah, I think you have nailed that, because when I came across your content on TikTok, I was like, oh, wow, you make this sound so easy. Because I can't tell you how many authors I know who are like, oh man, I just want to write. Why do I have to do this whole marketing thing? So your approach really does add a lot of sparkle to what could be a very intimidating process. But on that,
Right.
I'm wondering if you could help demystify the types of audiences that we would find on YouTube Shorts versus Instagram versus TikTok.
Absolutely. Yeah. So TikTok people go to for authenticity. Really, people want to connect with others on TikTok and simply feel something. TikTok is a little bit messy. People don't wear makeup there. People are, sometimes people don't even show their face, but it's really authentic. And that's where I really like connecting with people. I think that authors can connect with readers on a really deep emotional level there on TikTok. Instagram is kind of TikTok's cousin, but a little bit more prim and proper. Aesthetics are a little bit more important on Instagram as far as what your grid looks like. And then YouTube Shorts, I find that YouTube, people are going to for how-tos, for information and education. So they want to know, what are the top 5 books that you've read this year? What is it like to be an indie published author? People are going to YouTube for that. So YouTube Shorts kind of lean into that.
So I'm wondering if you could help demystify this thing. A girlfriend and I, we have this hypothesis, and I mean, we're very new into this world. She's just started on Instagram and TikTok, and I have come out of the woodworks. I haven't had social media for 5 years, and this year, like, I'm coming back, and I am now posting to Instagram and TikTok for 30 days, and I'm currently on day 7. But we are feeling, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, that on Instagram, it's kind of a space where you engage with your loyal audience, the audience who knows you and has been around for a lot of your journey. Not necessarily where you find new people. It seems more to us like TikTok is where people can find you without you having to have had an audience already. What do you think about that?
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. TikTok is a great place to find new readers. For the most part, content is being pushed out to the For You page, so the majority of views and the majority of the people that see your content aren't even your followers. So it's a great place to bring people in and find new readers, but Instagram is where I love nurturing those readers. And I find that authors who
Oh.
bring their viewers from TikTok, those loyal readers, as you mentioned, from TikTok to Instagram, that's where you nurture them. You engage with them more, you really form those connections. And you can definitely form connections on TikTok, don't get me wrong, but I think that Instagram is great for that.
Yeah, because it seems like on Instagram, people are invested in you, where in TikTok, they're okay to just discover you, but also, like you've mentioned, move outside of the platform. Because I've had people ask me how do they watch the full podcast episodes just from watching a clip on TikTok. And I was like, what? You guys want to leave the platform? Amazing. But with Instagram, I find that people aren't necessarily engaging as much as they do on TikTok, but it's almost like they first go to a story. Like I find that the story function on Instagram is kind of where it's at, where the feed terminology, I'm not sure if I'm on saying the right thing, where the feed on TikTok is kind of where TikTok's at.
Exactly. Yes. Story and TikTok does have stories, but they don't perform nearly as well as Instagram. But the majority of the people that I know simply find all of their information through Instagram stories and don't even go through the feed, just as you mentioned.
It's just also interesting because on Instagram I have 20 followers, where on TikTok I have 100. And then the views on Instagram are lower, but the engagement is lower. Where on TikTok, the views are higher, there is engagement, the followers is higher. It's just so interesting what I found. So my question to you is, if there is a debut author out there who is wanting to grow an audience, what platform would you suggest they start on?
You can grow more rapidly on TikTok. However, my advice for a debut author, finding your readers, you need to know exactly where your readers are going. I require all of my clients to make sure that we go through an ideal reader avatar and just to create this ideal reader for them. All their demographics, their age, what their interests are, hobbies outside of simply reading. And we find out exactly where they're spending their time. So yes, TikTok is a great place to be to find new readers. However, if your reader is not there, if your readers aren't there, it's time wasted essentially. So really go where your ideal reader is. I do have a little cheat sheet that I created that I'm happy to share with you and your
Ooh,
viewers
of
that
course.
goes over all the various platforms, age groups, what their interests are, what each platform is best for, whether that's nurturing your readers, finding new readers, long form content like Substack, which is kind of blossoming now and, well, basically booming. Substack is really big with authors right now. But there's so many different platforms to be on and so many ways to connect with readers there.
I am not familiar with Substack. If you could just sort of explain what it is in a sentence or two.
Yeah, absolutely. So Substack is essentially a blog platform. It's a social media platform with essentially long form blogs, but it also translates to newsletter because readers get an email that, hey, my favorite author has posted a new blog. So there's free content that authors can post, but there's also paywalls and subscriptions. So you can also make money as an author on Substack if you have a large enough audience.
So how does discovery work on Substack?
People can search you, they give recommendations based on who you're already following. So a lot of, I mean, it's basically a search engine like all of the other social media platforms too.
Ah, okay, that's very interesting. So if an
Yeah.
author now is brave enough to put themselves out there and an author wants to go about starting on social media, what are some of the common mistakes that you have found debut authors making when trying to grow an audience online?
So the biggest mistake is trying to be everywhere. As I mentioned, there are so many different platforms, and I really suggest picking one or two where you know your ideal audience is going to be. Authors who try and be everywhere and post, 5 times a day often burn out before they even see results, which is really disheartening to see. And I'm all about posting, repurposing, and without the burnout because you're also writing your next book. You're marketing this book. You have a life. So I don't want anyone to burn out.
So my next two questions are somewhat technical questions. First, Could you speak to the role of hashtags? Are they still relevant, and how do we use them if they are?
Ooh, that is such a big question. Yes. Hashtags are not gone, but they're not nearly as important as they used to be. Niche hashtags are important, indie author or specific tropes, steamy romance. Including those can definitely be beneficial for authors, but we're past the days of dropping 30 hashtags in a post and being done. Keywords are so much more important because our social media platforms are essentially search engines now. So the more keywords that you use that your ideal reader is searching for, so if they're searching in TikTok or Instagram for books like Fourth Wing, or even on a search platform, books like Fourth Wing, and that your book is similar to that, using that keyword phrase can help bring you up and help you with your discoverability.
So, how many hashtags would you suggest then, if not 30?
I think as long as they're relevant, niche, important hashtags, maybe 5 to 7 max.
And then you spoke about keywords and
Mhm.
SEO. What is one tip you have for all of us with regards to SEO?
Think about what your ideal reader is searching for, really. Use what you think that they're searching for on TikTok or what is relevant to you and your content and your author brand, because that'll help categorize your content. It'll help the algorithm know exactly who you are, what you write, and then it'll make you more discoverable. So just put yourself in your reader's shoes with everything that you create, whether it's your captions, your videos, just everything. Think about your reader.
I've picked up that certain pieces of content seem to not perform well, and those would be, I wouldn't say salesy type of content, but when it is very clear that it is somewhat of a call to action. So whether it's maybe somebody speaking directly to their book, or maybe even like marketing tips or something. Do you think TikTok or Instagram sort of has to vet certain creators and then they feel comfortable sharing their content? Why does it seem like certain pieces of content perform way better and other pieces of content are almost held back?
That's a great question. And I think there are so many factors involved in why TikTok might hold certain pieces of content back. I don't know that it necessarily has to do with the creator, but again, if the algorithm is confused and maybe you're posting one type of content continuously
Mm.
and TikTok goes, okay, this creator creates this type of content. If you put something out there that's completely different, that might be a little bit of a red flag and they might not know what to do with it. And it might not be seeing the right type of viewers. And that's why it might not perform well. For authors, there's also particularly horror thriller authors and steamy romance authors. There are certain words, certain images that TikTok doesn't like. So I always practice extreme caution when helping authors of those genres because there are specific words that we can't include or you need to strike through them because TikTok will get mad. But I think it really has to do with what you're putting out there, and kind of training the algorithm essentially.
So, talking to posting the same type of content and like niching down, how do trends and challenges fall into this? Because wouldn't that be outside of the niche?
Good question. There are so many ways to incorporate and modify these trends to make them bookish and make them align with your author brand, which is one of the things that I love posting, these trends and how to make them yours. So yes and no, as long as you're still using your same keywords, indie author, romance, book. I think that those are not necessarily outliers. Those can actually help your author brand because a lot of those trends will get a lot of views. Just as a disclaimer, not all of those viewers will be your ideal reader, but a lot of them could be. So it's a great way to kind of build your author brand, get your name out there, and get more eyes on your content.
Could you share 2 content ideas that my audience could try if they want to start building a social media presence online?
I think that all authors should create what inspired me and what inspired me to start writing. And this can be a face to camera video like this. It can be a faceless video, which I do a lot of faceless author content ideas because a lot of people don't want to show their face or write under a pen name and maybe don't want others to know what they write. So there's ways to do this using overlay text, using simply written text, but sharing what your inspiration is I think one that all authors need to create. Something fun. They kind of remind me of BuzzFeed quizzes, like which character are you based on your favorite coffee drink? So an author will create either a carousel or a video of various coffee drinks, and people can pick their favorite one. Maybe if they don't like coffee, they pick the tea, and then you get a character. So it's soft selling your book, letting your readers in on who your characters are, what you write, while kind of offering a fun little quiz.
Could you please give us a tip for how we can stay consistent online? Because you spoke about burnout earlier, and I feel like we're all going to this incredibly enthusiastic with loads of ideas, and we probably use them in the first week and then have nothing left. So, how can we go about this consistently?
Yeah, batching content is my favorite way to be consistent because there are days when, I know I spoke about mental health, when I'm too anxious to post, when I'm deep in my drafting and I don't have time to post. So, for authors like me and like us, I feel like batching is the best way to go about that. Just sit down and create as many pieces of content as you can. And that doesn't need to be, 100 pieces of content. That can be, I'm going to create my 3 pieces of content for this week in this next 30-minute block and set a timer. I know as authors, we are such perfectionists. We let that editor brain come in and just edit things while we're doing it. So setting a timer and basically sprinting while I create content is the best way for me to just let that inner perfectionist go, and it's done. It's I'm going to let the meticulous nitpicking be for my writing and not for my content. Because again, people like messy, authentic. And the best way to do that is to just put yourself in there, create something, and then you have it to post later that week.
This is my favorite part of the interview, where I get to ask you about your book and also ask you to share some recommendations that you've read lately that have made you smile or have moved you.
My latest novel, Sisters Arcana, is a psychological thriller that involves 2 estranged sisters who reunite to decode cryptic tarot messages that have started being delivered to one of the sisters' doorsteps. And it involves grief, mental health, sisterhood, the path to self-trust, but there's also a lot of plot twists in there.
And what other books have you read? Maybe if you could suggest 1 or 2 that have made you smile.
Because I write thrillers, I read a lot of thrillers, so most of them aren't necessarily smile-inducing books. However, I do have a couple of recommendations for sure. The Christmas Pick is one that I read recently by 2 indie author friends. It's a sapphic romance, and it definitely made me smile. It's a Christmas book, and it takes place in this amazing town that they just crafted so well.
Thank you so much for your time. If people want to get in touch with you, if they have questions with regards to a marketing strategy, how would they go about that?
Absolutely. Yes. Find me on social media. I'm most active on TikTok and Instagram. My handle is Salima Ishq, my name. And I always take discovery calls. I love chatting with authors so we can chat about what would be a good fit for you. And I do author coaching. I have plenty of resources, more ideas, calls to action, hooks available for authors, as well as a freebie, 5 steps to creating your author brand.
Amazing. And if you're happy to share that link with regards to like how to create your avatar, I will include that in the description. But thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.